The Broken Iron Man. A loner discovers his daughter. Alexander Alex Thorne had built his entire life on control. He was a man who anticipated every outcome, who never allowed emotions to interfere with logic. But it only took one night, a quiet dinner at an unpretentious restaurant, for his world to explode. The moment he heard the soft sob of a little girl, he didn't expect to care. The instant he saw her big blue eyes, his blue eyes, he didn't expect to feel anything. And when the child's mother turned, pale and paralyzed, whispering his name like a ghost from the past, Alex knew nothing would ever be the same, because the little girl wasn't just a lost child. She was his daughter, and he had never known she existed. If you believe fate always finds a way to correct mistakes, leave a like right now. And if you're following this dramatic story of unexpected encounters, subscribe and hit the bell. Tell us in the comments, how would you react if you discovered a family secret of this magnitude? Chapter 1. The Shattered Calm. Alexander Thorne was used to control. In business, in negotiations, in life, everything followed a plan. No surprises, no missed opportunities, no loose ends. That was how he had built his renewable energy company in Manhattan, and how he had maintained his relentless success. But tonight, for the first time in years, he had broken the structure of corporate meetings and investor dinners, choosing something different. He wanted a quiet meal, somewhere far from the usual luxury, where he could be a simple anonymous person. He found himself at a small family restaurant on the outskirts of the city, near the Queens neighborhood. The place, called Maria's Hearth, was warm and cozy, with the aroma of freshly baked bread and grilled steak permeating the air. It was the kind of place where people weren't in a hurry, where laughter filled the booths instead of whispered business conversations. Waitresses flitted between tables, greeting regulars by name, and there was a palpable murmur of familiarity. Alex chose a table by the window, ordering a filet mignon and a glass of Bordeaux. He allowed himself an unusual moment to simply sit and breathe, looking around without the weight of deadlines. He found it strange how unfamiliar relaxation was. He was about to take his first sip of wine when a sound cut through the restaurant's soft hum, a low, trembling sob. He looked up, scanning the room until his gaze landed on a tiny figure near the counter. A little girl was sitting on the floor, her small shoulders shaking as she wiped her face with her tiny fists. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Dark curls framed her round face, and even from a distance, Alex could see the bright blue of her eyes, full of tears. Something tightened in his chest. He wasn't the type of man to get involved in personal matters, much less the problems of strangers. But something about this child, sitting alone on the floor of a crowded restaurant, looking lost and scared, made it impossible for him to look away. He pushed back his chair and stood up, crossing the room in a few strides. He crouched down beside her, making sure not to startle her. "Hello," he said softly. "Are you okay?" The little girl sniffled, looking up at him with tear-streaked cheeks. "I'm lost," she whispered. Alex felt a pang of concern. He had expected to hear something like, "I dropped my toy," or "I spilled my drink." But lost? That was different. He looked around, searching for a panicked parent, but no one seemed to be looking for a missing child. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. The girl hesitated, then wiped her nose on the sleeve of her small sweater. "Lumi," Alex nodded, offering the reassuring smile. "That's a beautiful name, Lumi. Where's your mom?" Her lips trembled again, and she shook her head. "She was here, but then she left. She said she'd be right back, but then I couldn't find her." Alex exhaled slowly. If her mother worked here, she had probably stepped away for a moment, expecting Lumi to stay put. And Lumi, being a child in a busy restaurant, had wandered off. "Your mom works here, right?" he asked. Lumi nodded. "She's a waitress." "All right," he said. "Let's go find her together, shall we?" Lumi hesitated for only a second, before sliding her tiny hand into his much larger one. The warmth surprised him. He wasn't used to holding something so small, so delicate. He felt out of place. As they walked through the restaurant together, Alex had no idea that this small, insignificant decision was about to change his life forever. Chapter 2. The Silent Reunion. Alex walked slowly through the restaurant, his large hand carefully holding Lumi's small one as he scanned the crowded room. The warmth of her fingers felt strangely fragile against his palm, and he found himself gripping her a little tighter, as if afraid she might slip away. Lumi stayed close to him, her free hand clutching the hem of her sweater. Her big blue eyes moved around the restaurant, searching for a familiar face. But the further they walked, the more uncertain she seemed. "Do you remember where you last saw her?" Alex asked, keeping his voice gentle. Lumi hesitated, then pointed toward the far side of the restaurant, where there was a counter with stacks of menus and a cash register. "She was over there, but she went to take food to someone, and then I didn't see her anymore." Alex nodded, guiding her in that direction. The restaurant was still crowded, but as they got closer to the counter, something changed. A voice cut through the noise, frantic, full of worry. "Lumi, Lumi!" Lumi immediately brightened, turning toward the sound. A woman rushed toward them, zigzagging between tables with the urgency of someone who had been searching for far too long. She wore a simple black dress, an apron tied around her waist, and her brown hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her dark eyes were wide with panic until they landed on Lumi, and relief flooded her features. Lumi's face lit up. "Mommy!" Before Alex could react, the little girl let go of his hand and ran straight into her mother's arms. The woman lifted her, hugging her tightly against her chest. "Oh my God, honey, where did you go?" "I told you to stay near the counter." Her voice trembled as she smoothed Lumi's hair, pressing a kiss to her head. "I did," Lumi mumbled into her shoulder. "But then I didn't see you, and I got scared." The woman exhaled shakily, closing her eyes for a brief second before pulling back to check her daughter's face. "Are you okay? You're not hurt." Lumi shook her head. "I'm fine." Alex, who had stepped back to give them space, found himself frozen when the woman finally looked up at him. And in an instant, everything changed. Alex knew those eyes. The color was different, dark brown instead of Lumi's bright blue. But the shape, the way they widened in shock, the way they reflected something raw and unexpressed. It was all too familiar. He knew her. She knew him. A moment of silence passed between them, long and heavy. "Alex?" Her voice was barely a whisper, as if she didn't quite believe what she was seeing. Alex felt something clench in his chest. He hadn't heard that voice in years, yet he still recognized it. "Isabel," he said, his own voice lower than usual. Her grip on Lumi tightened slightly, as if by instinct. Alex couldn't move. He couldn't think, because now that he was looking at her, really looking at her, a revelation hit him so hard, it nearly knocked the air out of his lungs. Lumi. Dark hair. Blue eyes. She wasn't just a child. She wasn't just a lost child in a restaurant. She looked exactly like him. Alex's stomach dropped. He felt his hands curl into fists as he forced himself to breathe. He turned to Isabel, clenching his jaw. "Tell me the truth," he said, his voice dangerously low. His heart hammered as he asked the question that would change everything. "Is she my daughter?" Chapter 3. 4 years of silence. Isabel felt her breath catch. Her arms instinctively tightened around Lumi, as if she could shield her daughter from the weight of the moment. She had imagined this scenario countless times. She had thought about what she would say if she ever saw Alex again. But she had never prepared for the reality. Alex was standing in front of her, his broad shoulders tense, his blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He had always had that presence, the kind that demanded answers without having to say much. But now, there was something different in his gaze, something raw, something she couldn't escape. "Is she my daughter?" His voice was calmer this time, but the demand in his tone remained. Isabel's heart hammered in her chest. She had always known this day would come. She just hadn't expected it to happen in the middle of a crowded restaurant, with Lumi's little arms wrapped around her neck, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Lying was not an option. She had already hidden the truth for years, and she knew there was no way to deny it now, not when Lumi was right there, looking like a miniature version of him. Isabel closed her eyes for a brief second before meeting his gaze again. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "She's yours." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at her, with an unreadable expression, as if trying to process the weight of what she had just said. Isabel braced herself for the anger, for the accusations, for anything. But the look in his eyes wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, something almost like betrayal. "How long?" His voice was controlled, but she could hear the tension beneath it. Isabel swallowed hard. 4 years, Alex exhaled sharply, running a hand through his dark hair. 4 years, he repeated, as if saying it aloud made it real. He looked back at Lumi, who watched them both with quiet curiosity, completely unaware of the meaning behind their conversation. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was lower now, but there was no doubt of the sharp edge in it. Isabel's fingers curled slightly against Lumi's back. "Because you had your whole life ahead of you," she said, forcing her voice to be steady. "You were building an empire. You had investors, meetings, deals worth millions. You were traveling all over the world, barely stopping for anything. I didn't want to be the person who stopped you." Alex let out a low, humorless laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Stop me?" His blue eyes burned into hers. "You didn't think I had the right to make that decision for myself?" Isabel's chest tightened. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "The right thing?" His voice was lower now, rougher. "You decided for me, Isabel. You decided I didn't deserve to know my own daughter, that I didn't deserve to be there for her." Isabel flinched for a second, but then her jaw tightened again. "You weren't ready, Alex. I knew it. You knew it. You were working 18-hour days, traveling the world, building your company. You barely had time for yourself, let alone a baby." Alex took a step closer, his blue eyes burning into hers. "That doesn't mean I wouldn't have tried." Isabel slightly flinched at his words, but she didn't look away. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "Well, you weren't," he said, his voice calmer now, but no less intense. "You hurt both of us." The silence stretched between them, laden with everything left unsaid. Alex inhaled deeply, forcing himself to think past the anger, past the resentment. He couldn't change the past. No matter how much he wanted it, no matter how much it consumed him, those 4 years were gone. But Lumi wasn't. His voice was firmer when he spoke again. "I'm not walking away from her, Isabel." Isabel swallowed hard, nodding. "I didn't expect you to." Alex studied her, looking for any sign that she was still going to fight him. But all he saw was exhaustion, guilt, and perhaps something else, something akin to relief. He looked toward the counter, where Lumi was now watching them with quiet curiosity. Alex crouched down, meeting her at eye level. "Hello, Lumi," he said, his voice softer now. Lumi blinked up at him with big blue eyes. "Hello." Alex hesitated for only a second before asking, "Do you know who I am?" Lumi tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. Then she looked at Isabel, as if seeking confirmation, before looking back at him. "You're the kind mister who helped me," she said naturally. Alex let out a breath, nodding. "Yes," he said. "I'm the kind mister who helped you." He paused, his voice lower now. "But I'm also something else." Lumi's brow furrowed slightly, curiosity shining in her blue eyes. "What?" Alex swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. He had spent years closing himself off, keeping emotions buried under layers of business and control. But looking into his daughter's eyes, the eyes that were exactly like his, there was no room for anything but the truth. "I'm your dad," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Lumi blinked up at him, as if trying to process his words. She looked at Isabella, again, then back at Alex. "Really?" Alex forced a small smile, even though he felt his chest was about to collapse under the weight of everything. "Yes," he said. "Really?" Lumi stared at him for another long second, before a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Oh!" Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Then, to his utter surprise, Lumi reached out her hand and took his. Alex felt his whole body freeze. Her fingers were tiny, delicate, warm. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Thorne, the man who had built an empire from nothing, the man who had never let anyone in, felt he had just found something more important than anything he had ever built. Chapter 4. The Emotional Negotiation. Alex stared at the small hand wrapped around his, feeling something shift deep inside him. Lumi's fingers were so tiny, yet they gripped his hand, with the kind of quiet confidence that tightened his chest. He had spent years negotiating multi-million-dollar deals, standing in boardrooms with some of the world's most powerful people, yet he had never felt so unprepared as he did in that moment. Lumi's blue eyes, his eyes, blinked up at him with innocent curiosity, waiting to see what he would do next. She wasn't scared. She wasn't pulling away. She was just there, holding his hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Alex swallowed hard, his mind racing. He should have been furious. He should have been demanding answers, demanding to know why Isabel had kept this from him for so long. But standing there, looking at Lumi, all he could think about was how much time he had already lost. 4 years. 4 years of first words, first steps, bedtime stories, scraped knees, and laughter, memories he would never recover. Isabel's voice broke the silence. "Lumi, sweetie, why don't you go sit at the counter for a minute? I need to talk to—" She hesitated, looking at Alex before finishing. "I need to talk to Mr. Thorne." Lumi looked between them, sensing the tension in her mother's voice, but she didn't argue. She simply gave Alex one last hand squeeze before letting go and skipping off to the counter, climbing onto a stool with ease. The instant she was out of earshot, Alex turned to Isabel, his jaw tight. "We need to talk, now." Isabel exhaled. Alex clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. "Why?" The word came out rough, bordering on too many emotions he hadn't had time to process. "Why didn't you tell me?" Isabel looked away for a second, crossing her arms over her chest as if bracing herself. "Because I was scared," she admitted. "Because I thought if I told you, you'd feel trapped. That you'd feel you had to choose between your life and a child you never planned for." Alex let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. "That wasn't your decision, Isabel. You don't get to decide how I would have felt. You don't get to erase me from my own daughter's life because you assumed I wouldn't want her. You weren't ready, Alex. I knew it. You knew it. You were working 18-hour days, traveling the world, building your company. You didn't even have time for yourself, let alone a baby." Alex took a step closer, his blue eyes burning into hers. "That doesn't mean I wouldn't have tried." Isabel flinched slightly at his words, but she didn't look away. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "Well, you weren't," he said, his voice lower now. "You hurt both of us." The silence stretched between them, charged with everything that was left to be said. Alex inhaled again, forcing himself to think past the anger, past the resentment. He couldn't change the past. Those 4 years were gone. But Lumi wasn't. His voice was firmer when he spoke again. I'm not walking away from her, Isabel. Isabel swallowed hard, nodding. I didn't expect you to. Alex studied her, looking for any sign that she was still going to fight him. But all he saw was exhaustion, guilt, and perhaps something else, something like relief. He turned to Isabel. We have to figure this out, for her. Isabel nodded again, her voice softer this time. Yes, we do. For the first time that night, Alex felt like he was finally taking control of something again. But this time, it wasn't about business or power. It was about being a father. The confession has been brutal. Now that the truth is out, do you think Alex, the man of control, will be able to adapt to being a father? Leave us your opinion in the comments and share this story with your friends. Chapter 5. Rewriting the Strategy. Alex had spent his whole life solving problems, negotiating impossible deals, and turning obstacles into opportunities. But as he sat across from Isabel in the small restaurant booth, he realized this was the one situation he couldn't approach as a business transaction. There was no strategy, no quick fix, no contract that could rewrite the last 4 years and erase the time he had lost with his daughter. I need to be in her life, Isabel. I don't care how we work it out, but I'm not walking away from her. Isabel exhaled slowly. I know, and I'm not going to stop you. She doesn't know anything about you, Isabel admitted. I never spoke of you. Alex clenched his jaw. Not even my name. Isabel shook her head. She asked once, a long time ago, why she didn't have a daddy like some of the other kids at daycare. I told her families come in all shapes, and ours was just the two of us. After that, she stopped asking. Alex's chest tightened. She deserves to know the truth. I know, Isabel said, her voice slightly breaking. But you have to understand, Alex. She's never had a father figure in her life. She doesn't know what that means. She's used to it, just being the two of us. Alex exhaled, forcing back the emotions. Then we take it slow, he said. I don't want to overwhelm her. Isabel hesitated before nodding. Agreed. She likes you, you know, Isabel said. Alex's eyes lifted to meet hers. Really? Isabel nodded, looking toward the counter where Lumi was now drawing on a napkin with a red crayon. She doesn't usually get this comfortable with strangers, but she let you hold her hand. That's not something she does often. I want to take her out sometime, he said finally. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Just her and me. Isabel hesitated, but then nodded. We can try. Alex slowly exhaled, some of the tension in his shoulders easing for the first time since this conversation began. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. And for now, that was all he could ask for. Chapter 6. The Night of the Swings. Alex arrived at the park early, pacing near the playground as he tried to calm the restlessness in his chest. He was about to have his first solo outing with his daughter. This wasn't business. This was personal. He saw Isabel walking hand in hand with Lumi toward him. Lumi saw him first. She stopped mid-sentence, then smiled. You're here, she announced, tugging on Isabel's hand before running toward him. Alex barely had time to brace himself before she reached him, stopping just inches away as she tilted her head with a curious expression. Did you bring me a story? Alex smiled, pulling a small hardcover book from his coat pocket. Your mom told me you like fairy tales. Lumi gasped dramatically. I love fairy tales. She took the book, flipping it over. Are there dragons? Alex crouched down to her level. Big ones. And princesses who aren't afraid of them. Lumi smiled. I like princesses who fight dragons. They're cooler than the ones who just wait for a prince. Do you want me to read it to you? He asked. Lumi nodded eagerly. But only if we sit on the swings. It's the best place for stories. Swings it is, Alex said, straightening up. Lumi grabbed his hand without hesitation, pulling him toward the playground. Alex let himself be led, still amazed by how naturally she accepted him. As he started reading, his voice was firm, but he was only semi-focused on the words. His mind kept wandering to the child beside him, to the way she listened so intently, to the way she already trusted him without question. Halfway through the story, Lumi reached out and tugged gently on his sleeve. "You have a nice voice," she said naturally. "Like a prince." Alex blinked, taken by surprise. Isabel, who had been standing a few feet away, let out a quiet laugh. "That's a first," she murmured. Alex smiled, shaking his head. "You think so?" Lumi nodded solemnly. "Yes, a prince or maybe a knight." Alex leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a playful whisper. "Knights fight dragons, you know." Lumi's eyes widened. "That means you could be one." "I guess we'll have to find out," Alex chuckled, turning the page. They stayed in the park for hours. When it was finally time to go, Lumi hugged Alex without hesitation, wrapping her small arms around his waist. He froze for a half-second before gently hugging her back. As Isabel guided her toward the car, Lumi looked over her shoulder, waving goodbye. "Goodbye, Night Alex." Alex let out a quiet laugh, waving back. Isabel paused before finally meeting his gaze. "That went better than I expected." "Yes," Alex nodded. "It did." Chapter 7. A Drawing and the True Wealth. Alex couldn't stop thinking about the way Lumi had hugged him. It had meant everything. 2 days later, he was standing at Isabel's apartment door in Queens. He was invited this time. The apartment was small, but cozy. Not grand, but it felt like a home. Lumi appeared, wearing a bright yellow princess dress with a slightly crooked plastic tiara. "I'm a princess today," she announced. "But not one who waits for a prince, one who fights dragons." "That's the best kind of princess," Alex chuckled. Lumi grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the sofa. "Do you like spaghetti? Mom makes the best spaghetti." Alex let himself be led. "I love spaghetti. Can I help?" Lumi gasped. "You want to help?" He smiled, looking at Isabel. "I think I can manage stirring a pot." Lumi laughed, then leaned in, as if to tell him a very important secret. "Mom doesn't like it when people mess up her kitchen." Dinner was surprisingly easy. Lumi talked the entire time, filling every silence with stories. Alex listened, genuinely fascinated. Then came the moment he didn't expect. Lumi set out a pile of crayons and paper, drawing with intense concentration. She looked up at him, then to the paper before holding it up for him to see. It was a drawing. 3 stick figures, one clearly smaller than the others, all holding hands. There was a house in the background, a sun in the corner, and a big blue scribble above them that he assumed was the sky. She pointed to each figure. "This is me. This is Mom. And this," she tapped the tallest figure, "this is you." Alex stared at the drawing, something tight forming in his throat. He wasn't sure what to say, how to process the fact that, in her mind, he was already a part of her life. Isabel watched, her eyes softening when she saw the drawing. "It's a pretty incredible drawing," Alex said, forcing himself to speak. Lumi smiled. "Do you like it?" "I love it." Alex leaned back, realizing he had been wrong. He had spent his whole life chasing success, thinking that was all that mattered. But sitting here, seeing his daughter draw her family on a piece of paper, he realized he had been mistaken. He didn't just want to be part of their lives. He needed it. Chapter 8. The Iron Man's Promise. Lumi eventually went to bed. Isabel reappeared from the hallway, observing him. "She's already attached to you," she said softly. "You can't disappear." Alex met her gaze, something solid and unbreakable in his eyes. "I'm not going anywhere." Isabel studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Good night, Alex." "Good night, Isabel." As he sat there, listening to the faint sound of Lumi's laughter from her room as Isabel read her a bedtime story, Alex realized that, for the first time in years, he wasn't chasing something he could never reach. He was exactly where he needed to be. He turned to Isabel as she returned. "I know I have no right, but I need to ask you. Will you forgive me for the time I missed? And will you let me try to be the man and the father you both need?" Isabel looked at him, searching his eyes. "You need to show me, Alex. The world of Manhattan business is not the world of Queen's life. My trust is not a quick transaction. I know, Alex agreed, but I'm here, and I will prove it. The Iron Man of Manhattan had crumbled, and in its place, he had found love and purpose. What do you think will be the greatest challenge for Alex? Adapting to the simple life in Queens, or dealing with the shock and judgment of the Manhattan elite when they discover his new family? Give a like if Lumi's drawing moved you. Share this video so more people know the true wealth of life, and leave a comment with your predictions for the next chapter. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 9. The Conflict of Worlds Continuation. Cautious, dramatic music. Welcome back. Alexander Thorne has found his true wealth in Queens, but the world of Manhattan doesn't forget its titans. Now, Alex must bridge the 7-mile gap between his high-control corporate life and the simple trust of his new family. Smash that like button if you think Alex should choose his family over his empire. Subscribe now and tell us, what is the biggest danger to Alex's new life? Part 1. The intrusion of Manhattan, the days following the confrontation, were defined by a tense, yet hopeful, routine. Alex began his Operation Integration. He drastically reduced his working hours, delegated meetings, and even canceled a major business trip to Tokyo. He found himself spending his mornings at Maria's hearth, drinking terrible coffee and watching Lumi's dramatic entrance for breakfast before driving her to a small, brightly painted daycare near Jackson Heights. Isabel maintained her distance. She allowed his presence but not his intimacy. She would watch him from the kitchen, a careful, analytical expression on her face, noting how he interacted with Lumi. She was testing his sincerity, looking for the first sign of the old, workaholic Alex to reappear. The first clash came swiftly. Alex had promised Lumi he would attend her daycare's mini mascot day on Tuesday. However, on Monday afternoon, his executive assistant, Mr. Wallace, arrived unannounced at Maria's hearth with a stack of urgent contracts. "Mr. Thorne, these documents are critical for the Solaris merger," Wallace whispered urgently, ignoring the strange setting. "The board needs your signature and final analysis by tomorrow morning. This deal is worth $50 million, sir." Alex felt the familiar pull of his old life, the adrenaline, the pressure, the sheer magnitude of the money. He knew the merger was vital for his company. "I need to leave now, Isabel," Alex said, already scanning the papers. "I'll be at the office all night. I have to miss Mascot Day." Isabel set down a damp cloth on the counter. Her dark eyes, usually weary, were now sharp with disappointment. "Of course, Alex. I expected as much. The $50 million deal is more important than a 4-year-old's expectations. I'll tell Lumi her knight got called away to fight a bigger dragon." The irony of her words, using the very language he used to connect with Lumi, cut him deep. "This is my job, Isabel. This is what pays for everything," Alex retorted, the stress making him sharp. "And this," Isabel gestured to the empty restaurant, "is our life, and it can't be bought by your $50 million deals. Go, but don't expect Lumi to believe in your fairy tales when you break your promises." Alex left, feeling a knot of cold guilt tighten in his stomach. He worked all night, closed the deal, and won, but the victory felt hollow. Part 2. The Strength of a Simple Promise. Didn't go home to his Manhattan apartment. He drove straight to Maria's hearth. He found Isabel alone, setting tables. "I signed the contracts," Alex announced, his voice tired. "The merger is a success." "Congratulations, Mr. Thorne," Isabel said, her voice flat, not looking up. "Lumi asked for you," she continued. "She kept saying, 'Where is Knight Alex? Did a mean dragon capture him?' I am sorry, Isabel. I had to. You made a choice, Alex, and for 4 years I've had to be both the stability and the disappointment. I'm tired of having to explain your absence." Alex knew a simple apology wouldn't suffice. He pulled out his phone and made a call, pacing the small restaurant. "Wallace, cancel the Tokyo trip. Yes, the entire trip. I'm grounding myself for 2 weeks. Yes, I'm serious. You will manage. I need 2 weeks of total availability. No, I don't care about the shareholders. My family is the priority. Handle it." He hung up, feeling a huge wave of relief. He walked back to Isabel. "I canceled a major business trip to ground myself," Alex said. "I am here, Isabel. I am all in. But I need you to tell me what to do to earn your trust. Don't hide behind resentment anymore. Give me a task." Isabel looked at him for a long moment. She saw the genuine exhaustion and the fierce determination in his blue eyes. She knew this commitment was not a simple gesture. "Fine," she said, finally dropping her guard. "Lumi's daycare needs a new roof for their outdoor play area. It's been leaking for months, and they can't afford the repairs. It's not a contract, Alex. It's manual labor, dusty, cheap work. Fix the roof. If you can commit to something simple, without profit, just for Lumi's well-being, then maybe I'll start believing in your promises." Alex smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. "Consider it done, Isabel. Where is my tool belt?" What do you think of Isabel's request? Is fixing a daycare roof the perfect test of Alex's dedication, or is it too harsh? Tell us in the comments. Part 3. The Knight's Tool Belt. The next morning, Alex showed up at Lumi's daycare, not in a $1,000 suit, but in worn jeans and a borrowed tool belt. He looked utterly out of place. The other parents, mostly working-class families from the neighborhood, stared at the massive SUV he drove and the intensity in his eyes. Alex spent the next 2 days tearing down and rebuilding the small, dilapidated roof. He learned how to measure lumber, how to use a nail gun, and how to ignore the constant discomfort of physical labor. He worked alongside a few other fathers, sharing quiet nods and bottles of water. On Wednesday, Lumi's class was brought outside for playtime. Lumi saw Alex on the roof and waved frantically. "That's my dad!" she shouted proudly to her friends. "He's fixing the roof! He's a night builder!" Alex looked down at his daughter, sweat stinging his eyes, a genuine, profound sense of fulfillment washing over him. This feeling, this pride in his daughter's eyes, was worth more than any corporate merger. When he finished the roof, the daycare director offered him a check. Alex shook his head. "It's a gift from a grateful father," he said simply. That evening, Alex returned to Isabel's small apartment in Queens. He smelled of wood dust and sweat. He was exhausted, but smiling. Isabel looked at his rough hands, his dirt-stained clothes, and his tired face. She saw the sincerity in his eyes. "You did it," she whispered. "It was the best merger I ever closed," Alex chuckled. Isabel slowly approached him. For the first time, she did not flinch or put up a barrier. She reached out and touched his face gently. "I still have a long way to go to forgive you for the past, Alex," she admitted, her eyes vulnerable. "But I trust the man who built that roof." That night, for the first time since their reunion, Alex did not sleep on the sofa. Isabel led him into her small bedroom, not with passion, but with a quiet sense of shared commitment. They held each other, two broken people finally finding anchor in the face of a terrifying, but hopeful, future. Chapter 10. The Unveiling. 2 weeks later, the final test arrived. The unveiling. Alex had to return to Manhattan for a mandatory, high-profile board meeting. It was the moment he had to reveal his new life to the corporate world. He wore his best suit, but this time he wore a small hand-drawn picture of Lumi, her 3 stick figures, tucked into his inner jacket pocket. The meeting was tense. The chairman, it's Sterling, a ruthless corporate figure, questioned Alex's recent absence and the canceled Tokyo trip. "You missed a critical networking opportunity, Alex. Shareholders are concerned about your focus. What is the priority now?" Mr. Sterling's voice was sharp. Alex looked around the room, seeing the familiar faces, ambitious, ruthless, and entirely disconnected from his reality. "Gentlemen," Alex said, standing tall, "my priority has changed. 4 years ago, I became a father without knowing it. I recently discovered I have a daughter, Lumi, and I have a new priority: my family." The silence in the boardroom was absolute. A few executives chuckled dismissively. "A child from an affair, Alex?" Mr. Sterling sneered. "We run a billion-dollar company, not a daycare. This new distraction is unprofessional." Alex walked to the massive boardroom table and looked directly at Mr. Sterling. "Lumi is not a distraction. She is the reason I am more focused, more ethical, and more determined than ever. I spent my life chasing control and power, but I was empty. Lumi gave me purpose. I will continue to run this company with integrity, but if I am forced to choose between this board and my daughter, the choice is already made." Mr. Sterling, surprised by the firmness in Alex's voice, paused. He saw not the insecure young executive, but a man finally anchored by a fierce personal conviction. "Very well, Alex," Mr. Sterling conceded after a long silence. "We will monitor your performance, but if this situation affects the bottom line, there will be consequences." Alex simply nodded. He knew the fight was just beginning. He left the boardroom, feeling the weight of the corporate world lift from his shoulders. He had been honest. He had chosen his daughter publicly. He drove straight back to Queens. He found Lumi and Isabel outside, playing with a small soccer ball. "Night, Alex," Lumi shouted, running to him. "Did you slay the dragons?" Alex knelt down, hugging his daughter close. "I did, Lumi. And now, the night is home." Isabel watched, her eyes shining with love and respect. She knew their life would be complicated, full of battles against Manhattan's demands. But she also knew that the man who had traded his $1 million deal for a simple roof and his arrogance for honesty was a man worth loving. The legacy. Alexander Thorne learned that the greatest power in the world is not control, but vulnerability. He found that true wealth is not measured in balance sheets, but in the innocent embrace of a child. His journey from an Iron Man to a night builder was a testament to the fact that it is never too late to trade a profitable empire for a life of purpose and love. Thank you for following this incredible story of redemption and love. Final call to action: subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding true purpose. Like this video if you believe a loving family is the biggest business success. Comment below. What should Alex's next act of service be for the Queens community to prove his commitment? Chapter 11. The Manhattan Counterattack Continuation Tense, High Stakes. Music. Welcome back, followers. Alex successfully chose his family over the boardroom, but the Manhattan elite doesn't forgive public humiliation easily. Now, the battle shifts from emotional commitment to legal warfare, testing if the night builder can defend his new life. Smash that like button if you stand with Alex and Isabel. Subscribe now and tell us, what legal move do you think Mr. Sterling will make next? Part 1. The Invisible War. The immediate aftermath of Alex's public declaration saw his life simplify, but the consequences from his former world were swift and brutal. Mr. Sterling, the chairman, could not fire Alex. His visionary leadership was too valuable to the Solaris merger, but he could make his life a living hell. The counterattack was financial and indirect. The board initiated a series of legal probes into Alex's delegated projects, claiming mismanagement of time and resources during his 2-week self-grounding. One morning, Alex received a subpoena at Maria's hearth. The charge: a shareholder lawsuit alleging that Alex's cancellation of the Tokyo trip and subsequent delegation had caused a $10 million loss in potential Asian contracts. The anxiety returned, cold and sharp. This was the kind of lawsuit that could consume a person, draining their energy, time, and fortune. Isabel found Alex pacing the small living room, the legal documents spread across the coffee table. He was back in his high control mode, pacing, calculating, his jaw clenched. "They want to bury me in paperwork, Isabel," Alex growled, running a hand through his hair. "They know I'm the best at my job, so they're attacking me where I'm weakest, in legal bureaucracy. They want me to choose between fighting this and being here for Lumi." Isabel didn't respond with anger or resentment. She sat down, calmly reading the documents. "This isn't about the $10 million loss, Alex. This is about control and loyalty. They're testing if your root is strong enough to withstand their storm. I need a corporate legal team, a huge one, and I need to be in court, not in Queens," Alex countered, frustration evident. "No," Isabel stated firmly. "You need a good lawyer, yes, but you don't need to be consumed by the fight. You promised presence, and you will keep it. You let the lawyer fight the papers. You fight for our life." Part 2. Isabel's Strategic Alliance. Isabelle, a sharp woman who ran a successful restaurant and single-handedly managed her life for years, took a surprising initiative. She used her local network and resources. "You may own Manhattan's top law firms, Alex," Isabel said, looking at him with a determined glint in her eye. "But I know the best litigator in Queens, a woman named Elena Ramirez. She handles the big cases locally, fights with grit, and charges fairly. She understands injustice." Alex was skeptical. A local litigator against Mr. Sterling's corporate lawyers? She understands people, Alex. Your corporate lawyers understand contracts. This lawsuit is about perception and loyalty, not just money. Let Elena handle the perception, and you handle the loyalty. Alex, realizing he couldn't fight this battle with his own corporate mindset, agreed. Elena Ramirez took the case. Her strategy was simple. Frame the lawsuit as an attack on family values and ethical commitment, proving that Alex's decision was an ethical necessity that ultimately strengthened the company's moral standing. If you were Alex, would you trust a local lawyer to fight a massive Manhattan corporate firm? Vote in the comments. Part 3. The Test of Vulnerability. While Elena fought the legal battle, Alex fulfilled his presence promise by taking over Lumi's bedtime routine. Every night, he read her the fairy tales, becoming the dedicated night Alex she adored. One night, Lumi handed him a letter she'd drawn for him. It was a picture of him, in his suit, fighting a large, green dragon labeled Lawsuit. "Why are you fighting a dragon, Papa?" Lumi asked, using the Spanish word for dad, which she was slowly starting to adopt. Alex knelt down. "Because some dragons try to steal the good things we build, Lumi. But the knight always protects his castle. Will you win?" "I will," Alex promised. "But the trick is that the strongest knights don't fight with swords. They fight with truth and love." Later, sitting on the sofa, Isabel watched him. "You're getting good at this, Alex. I'm learning. I still have the right to ask you to leave, you know," Isabel said, her voice quiet. "If this stress becomes too much, if you start becoming the man who runs away again." Alex didn't argue or get angry. He simply took her hand, the calloused one from years of working in the restaurant. "I gave the board my word. Now I give you mine. I will face this and every future challenge with you by my side. No running, no hiding, ever." Isabel nodded, a genuine smile finally reaching her tired eyes. That night, she made a quiet decision. Chapter 12. The Conscious Choice. After a 2-month legal battle, Elena Ramirez delivered a stunning victory. She successfully argued that the lawsuit was retaliatory, a punitive measure against ethical commitment. The judge dismissed the case, citing that a corporation's bottom line cannot supersede a director's right to family and ethical commitment. Alex was cleared. The victory was a massive win for Alex, for Elena, and for family values in the corporate world. Alex went straight to Queens. He found Isabel in the quiet restaurant. "We won, Isabel. Elena won. We won," Alex announced, euphoria written on his face. Isabel looked at him. Smiling down, yeah. "I know. Oma. Elena just called. You are a free man." "Now," Alex said, taking her hands. "I have my freedom, my fortune, and my family. It's time to make a permanent choice." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. It didn't contain a diamond ring, but a custom-made silver key. "This is the key to my Manhattan penthouse. I've signed the deed over to the company's foundation. It will be sold to fund a new initiative," Alex said. "I don't need it. I don't want it. My home is here. Isabel, marry me. Not with a diamond, but with this commitment. I choose Queens over Manhattan. I choose you and Lumi over the sterling lifestyle. I choose true wealth over false power." Isabel's eyes filled with tears, not from surprise, but from the depth of his sacrifice. "I don't need a ring, Alex. I needed a partner. And you, Knight Alex, have finally shown up." She didn't take the key. She took his hands, kissing him deeply. A kiss of complete trust and commitment. The legacy. Alexander Thorne sold his Manhattan apartment and moved permanently into the small but cozy Queens home with Isabel and Lumi. He continued to lead his company, but remotely, ensuring his work served his life, not the other way around. He learned that the true measure of a man's empire is not the height of his buildings, but the strength of the foundation he builds at home. Thank you for following this incredible story of finding true wealth. Final call to action. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding true purpose. Like this video if you believe a loving family is the biggest business success. Comment below. What simple gift do you think Alex gave Isabel instead of a diamond ring?